Welcome to the Innovation Storytellers podcast. We talk to innovators and disruptors in R&D, product managers, entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, innovation thought leaders, and their storytellers who help bring their amazing ideas to life. Now, here's your host, Innovation Storyteller, CEO, speaker, and coach to the world's top innovation teams, Susan Lindner.
Welcome to the Innovation Storytellers podcast. I'm Susan Lindner, and for the last 20 years, I've been helping innovators and disruptors to tell their stories. 10 acquisitions, hundreds of innovative products, and countless hockey stick growth curves, and a whole bunch of failures along the way. I wanted to share how the greatest innovations get to market using stories to pave the way. Everything right from that initial ideation phase all the way up to superstardom in every step along the way. So this podcast is about inviting some of the greatest innovators and storytellers on to discuss how they did it, some of the missteps along the way, and the ways they actually get buy-in and the resources, runway, and recognition that every innovator deserves to see that innovation come to light. So I'm really excited to have with me today two incredible communicators and innovators. First, Gina Mitchell is the Director of Enterprise Innovation at TD Ameritrade. She is a creative problem solver who has spent her entire career in the financial services industry building programs within corporate innovation. And for the past several years, she's been working to infuse innovation principles and mindsets into the core business, providing a way to explore new ideas of opportunity while still executing on core business initiatives. So important, right? We need to think about the profit at the same time while we're innovating. Welcome, Gina. And I'd also like to introduce Michael Jareo, who is an enterprise innovation and agility consultant at TD Ameritrade. Michael is a teacher, coach, and a mentor with 15 years of experience in financial services, including innovation and strategy, lean process improvement, and operations management. He is super energized when someone begins to apply new concepts and approaches in a way that improves their work and their leadership abilities at work. So thank you both so much for joining us here today. I'm just thrilled to have you here.
Thanks for inviting us. We're very excited.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So Innovation Storytellers, right? We're all about talking about the innovation and the storytelling that goes with it, so we get access to all the good stuff that lies on the other side. So tell us a little bit first about the culture of innovation at TD Ameritrade. What was it like as you stepped into it and what you were hoping to accomplish, Gina?
Yeah, we had a great basis already in place. So we had a lean framework and an agile framework that we had built upon. So that problem solving mentality was already baked into our culture pretty well ingrained. And then agile just added another component to that where we had a really empowered culture. So when we brought innovation to it, it was tapping into some of that foundation along with adding in the creativity and the different way of thinking outside the box that we could bring to them, and also explaining that innovation isn't just about sticky notes and putting things all over the board and having like beanbag chairs and all that. It was really about rigor and discipline in the way that you approach these things and having a structure that was complementary to the creativity that you need when you're innovating.
Wait, so you're telling me that a barista is not sufficient and a hackathon is not sufficient to create a culture of innovation in a company? I'm shocked.
Maybe the ping pong table. Maybe the ping pong table will throw it over the edge.
That's the doer right there.
I mean, we're not saying we don't use sticky notes. It's just not enough.
Even the pink ones? Okay. So,
they are my favorite, but yeah.
So tell us a little bit, a lot of companies like to start with, everybody in the pool. Like, let's get everyone excited about innovation. Let's get every team member. We never know where the best new idea is going to come from. All ideas are welcome. Throw open the suggestion box. Did you try that approach, or was that approach tried at TD Ameritrade?
we've tried a number of different approaches that did invite everyone in. And
can you
we
share with
started
us?
like
What are
many
those?
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
We started like many do with the hackathons, and those over time grew from just a technology-focused event to something that invited the entire organization in, and they became what we called the think-offs, or that idea just generation. And we began to split them up. Is this a hack or is this just an idea? And competing on the two different tracks. And as someone who won one of those contests one time, whose idea never saw the proverbial light of day, absolutely there was some aspects of kind of innovation theater. We had leaders get up and say, everybody's an innovator, which was true, and an amazing encouragement and an invitation into the approach, but also created what some of our leadership like to call innovation anarchy, where everybody was off doing their own thing. And
well, that's a new one for me, innovation anarchy. I never heard of that one before.
All of the right intentions, all of the right desires, all of the right passion, and but as Gina mentioned a bit ago, without the focus and the approach that brought rigor and discipline, and more than just sticky notes on the wall, more than just the barista and chocolate. I think when our team got involved, we were even handed some ideas out of the last round of all of the winners of that idea competition. Of 10 funded ideas, I think 7 or 8 of them were already on a roadmap somewhere. People just didn't necessarily know. And a couple were given to us and said, hey, you've got budget, go do it. But we continued to find problems just trying to get somebody to help out. I think one of our earliest kind of understandings there, like many do, we were encouraged to start a lab because we need to show early wins to go.
Ooh, the lab. Yes.
Yeah,
the lab.
Get them in here.
Wait, so I'm having a vision, Michael, when you say like innovation theater coupled with innovation anarchy, like innovation theater takes place on the stage of not real innovation going on. And the innovation anarchy is what's happening in the audience, right? Among all the staff members, around all the team members who are like, whoa, it's a mosh pit.
We're trying to get on the stage, right? Now I should be up there. I'm the one who should be up there, right?
Right.
And absolutely, right? And so listening to all the conventional wisdom, we thought, oh yeah, we should probably have a lab. We should be bringing all of those ideas here because people have these wonderful ideas, but they're homeless. Nobody wants to pick them up. And so maybe we can take them and we can incubate them and we can make them something. But we had a realization early on as we were describing our value proposition as a team, that if we brought homeless ideas to us, they would be homeless when they left. It really didn't matter how great we made them look. If nobody cared about them when they were thought of and when we started developing them, we still had an incredibly uphill battle to create a home for them afterwards. Just that approach of getting everybody in is encouraging and it's exciting and everybody is invited. But we began to run into these problems that probably many of your listeners and anybody who's in the space has run into, of all those homeless ideas kind of stay homeless when you just engage everyone without any kind of direction or any kind of rigor or discipline.
So the Innovation Lab is an idea homeless shelter if it's not backed up with policy, right? I mean, You could do the same thing on the streets of Manhattan. You could run a homeless shelter with no direction for people to go. And the same is true with ideas. So that innovation, I love some of these metaphors that you're creating here, innovation theater and innovation anarchy that comes when there's no direction. And the Innovation Labs becomes a homeless shelter for ideas if they don't get picked up or adopted or given Section 8 housing and a place for people to really grow and bloom. Right. These ideas need the same. So, fascinating. So how did you make this shift then with turning, these homeless ideas, or how did you create the support system for the ideas to really become nurtured and flourish and turn into something of value?
The first step that we took, we used Adobe Kickbox's platform. So they have an open source platform, and we decided, we weren't quite shifted completely away from having some sort of an ideation challenge, but we knew we needed better validated ideas. So if we brought people in and taught them that method, which is all based on lean startup principles, where they don't just take an idea and throw it over the wall. They actually had to put some work into it and some research and do some surveys and like actually collect some evidence on this. We thought, okay, maybe this is the way to do it. It's a smaller group. We can put them through a 2-day workshop, and then we can coach them over, I think it was like an 8-week time frame. And then, we'll have better validated ideas. They'll have a presentation or a pitch to give to leadership, and it'll be so much better validated that the leadership, there'll be no question. They'll want to take it and run with it. So we did that once, and it was fantastic for the associates. They bought in, they did what they needed to do. They loved the methodology. They really did come up with some fabulous presentations, and some even did move on to different areas. One actually, I think, got put into place too. I mean, so there was some greatness that came out of that. But we still saw the problem that was on the opposite side, which was the decision makers. They just didn't know what questions to ask. They didn't know how to know if it was a good idea or not. There was no structure for them. So we really, at that point, said, okay, we need to shift our focus to the decision makers, because the associates are excited. They love this stuff. They're engaged, and they will, anytime you ask them to get involved, they get involved with this. But the decision makers don't know what to do with the ideas once they get them. You talking about moving them through the stages, they just didn't know what to do with it. And we weren't giving them the tools. We weren't giving them the tools. We were just assuming they would know what to do. And so we shifted from that approach to saying, okay, we need to focus on the decision makers. And that's when we really started looking at, okay, what do the decision makers need in order for this to be successful? And that's where we really landed on strategy. They have strategic goals. They have things that they want to be investing in. So it's not that they're not being innovative. They have really broad ideas of innovation and where they want to go next. So they had a kind of a concept of what those guardrails should be. And if we gave them some tools on how to better look at the trends that are out there, they could really create that innovation thesis. They would be able to have those guardrails. And then we bring in the innovators, maybe in these smaller search teams that could come in and search in those areas that the business leaders have said, you know what, we really want to go into this space, go crazy, go in here and see what you can find. It gave that structure to it. And the decision makers then were more bought in because they were the ones coming up with the strategy to then let these innovators really explore and do what they do best with the creativity and the ability to really rapidly experiment. So we were very heavy on the associate side. We'd done everything we could from a perspective of getting them engaged, but those decision makers, they were the ones that really were the ones that we needed them to start driving this more and to understand the process better, because they needed to support and nurture those innovation teams.
And ultimately come up with the budget too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The budget too. Yeah. We needed them to put the money forward. And not only the money, the resources. So we found that we had people giving the money, but when you can't get in and talk to the experts that already have some information in these areas, or even compliance or legal, some of those supporting roles, if you don't have that, sometimes that's even more important than the money, because we weren't spending a lot of money up front. It's little dollars. So right. Even our budget, we could cover some of those initial experiments. But when it comes to people, we needed the leadership to even assign their own people to these search teams, because we wanted everybody that cared to have skin in the game. Similar to what Michael said, if you don't have people that care about this idea, but it falls in their area, it would align to their area, it doesn't match up. So you'd have these ideas that would align to these areas, and then they'd say, no, we're not interested in it. But if you have their own people doing this work, doing the research, getting involved, then they buy into it. And so there's not that tension at the point where they actually need to take it into their existing product lines and really start making it happen and getting it commercialized.
It's so often this imputed logic, right? That if we work for a company and we're hired by senior executives to do a particular task, like innovate, the assumption is that those executives above us already have a conception of an innovation framework, how products should be, thumbs up or thumbs down, like Caesar, how to create evaluation models for products that have never existed in the course of human history before, or even in our own industry. And we should make these generalized, maybe one of the biggest assumptions we make in the innovation process is that the people upstairs actually know how to evaluate the innovation. And I just think it's so fascinating that you raised that, because it's like, it's almost like reverse mentoring. I think about some interns that I've hired in my own agency who are in their 40s and 50s, who had to learn new technologies, and then they were able to teach younger people how to write a persuasive and effective email, that doesn't include 3 emojis. There's different kinds of information that we need to share with one another. And the assumption that our executives know how to evaluate innovation is a myth, right? We need to address that, and we need to assess that even before we can bring the innovation to them. Fascinating. Exactly. I'm so glad you shared that.
There are a couple of analogies that came up, and you'll have to forgive me for more analogies. But as we were doing these conversations, right, there is this idea that we had taught all of these innovators to think differently, approach things differently, ask better questions, and they were throwing the ball down the field, but there was no leader down there to catch it. They were on a completely different field, right? And so everything that you just said, absolutely true. In one of the workshops that we are still doing today, we kind of present this idea that there's this myth out there that if I have an idea, that's all I need to have a new product or a new business, because my idea is so brilliant. But the reality is there's a whole lot that surrounds just that brilliant idea that can make it real, right? The other thing that I was thinking related to what Gina was talking about, when we had people actually approaching this process, right, of going through and thinking differently and asking these questions and getting ready to give this to leadership, there's this other idea that my idea doesn't have to be the most compelling thing in the world. It just needs to be better than one thing on their list already. And that sounds so simple and logical. And sure, I can convince them that it's better than one thing of their list of 7. It doesn't even have to be the top thing. It just needs to be better than one of them to get onto the list. But the reality that we found is that by starting with the leadership, engaging them early on and getting them to give us the list of where they wanted to go, gave our people a big leg up in actually exploring ideas and looking for things, rather than trying to convince you that it's that it's better than one thing on your list. I've already kind of pre-vetted the idea because you told me what the list is and where you want to fill in some holes already. And that was just an incredibly powerful way to approach it differently.
Well, and this also makes an assumption that your innovation team and your executive team or your executing committee have a pipeline of communication to one another. Right? So often we find that the innovation lab is like on Dr. Moreau's secret island, and you need special passwords to even go up to the big, get onto that, secret lair where, Dr. Evil's twisting his mustache, figuring out the next cool new thing. Right. So, that communications channel is so important. So did you have a conduit to communicate with that executive committee, that execution committee? Was that you guys? Was there a comms person involved? How did it work?
Actually, through the framework, what we set up was we had been working with a company called Bionic that was helping our incubator. We have an incubator too that goes from new to big ideas. So they were kind of on the outside. But Bionic had a growth board structure for that incubator. And we thought, okay, how could we do this inside the core? And what we found is we needed our decision makers, those business people, to sit on that investment committee so that as these search teams were exploring these areas, they would then report out what they were finding to this growth board. And that growth board, then they had that direct connection. And what that also did was, to what you were saying, it kept it from being something happening over there and it was happening within their own business unit. They had control over it. They could ask questions. We gave them a scorecard so that they could it helped guide them through the questions that they needed to ask. And we also took away, or we set the stage to say, you know what, we need to stop being so nice, because what was happening is executive leaders want to be supportive, right? They want to tell you, oh, that's a great idea, we love it. But then they'd go away and they didn't really love it. And so what we did was we gave them something that they could use to really measure it in a factual way, so they didn't feel like they were being mean, but then they were being honest. And we would keep them talking with the search team themselves openly, having these conversations so that the search team knew exactly where they stood. And then you also teach the search team, you know what, don't fall in love with this, because even if this doesn't work, the next thing might work. So don't fall in love with your idea, because you want to go where the evidence is pointing. And if your growth board or your investment committee is sitting there telling you, you're not convincing me, you've done all of this work, you're not able to show me the evidence, we need to shelve this now. That's okay. Like, cool, we'll go on to the next thing. And that's really, we just took the lid off of everything and just put everybody in there together so that they could actually start having these conversations. So it wasn't the search team working for months and then going and talking to an executive that had no idea what journey they had been on and what they were trying to do. And then they'd say, oh, this is great, we love your presentation, yes. And then they'd say, go back and keep doing that. And they'd go away for another, several months, and these people would have no idea where they stood. So it was really, to your point, Susan, bringing those people closer, bringing the business groups that had the decision-making ability, the ability to invest alongside with the search team, so that they felt like they were partners in it all, and took away the worry that, hey, I'm going to fail at this. It really was, where does the evidence need to take us? And so everybody felt they could be honest.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with the head of the global incubator at Indeed.com, the global job search engine. And she was saying that it's really important to not to fall in love with your solution, but to fall in love with the problem.
Exactly.
Because if we get so attached to the solution, we may lose the opportunity for the best solution possible. And owning the problem is actually where our mindset needs to be. What do you think about that?
Oh, that's exactly, that is exactly what we teach and what we tell people. And that was some of the problem that we had with those early on hackathons and things that Michael had talked about, is that people loved their solution. And we would find, well, tell us what problem it's solving. Well, it's not really solving a problem. We just love it. And we think it'd be really cool if we could put this in place. Even when we were early on with our advanced tech, they'd put oh, well, Google Glasses came out, let's see if we could do something cool with that. But there was never a problem they were trying to solve. So yes, that is definitely a mantra of ours too, is to fall in love with the problem and not the solution.
Yeah.
Nearly verbatim, that's the way we say it. Yeah. and then the other thing that we try to frame that up in is also this concept that, a cool idea, a cool product, a cool technology, whatever that is that you're excited about, it doesn't go anywhere unless it's rooted in a customer need that they actually care about, that they care about solving. It's, as Gina said earlier, it's basic lean startup, it's basic, mom test, it's basic lean and agile and all of those things, but putting it into a framework where if you're trying to develop a new innovative idea, it almost doesn't matter how innovative it is if nobody actually wants it. And getting people to focus on that problem first has been so critical. And we've seen people take some wild pivots when they've actually held on to that. And we've seen some people spectacularly trip when they refuse to listen to that coaching.
Yeah, when they won't let go.
And that's just the reality of it. Yeah.
So what do you do with those folks who, and I've shared this on several episodes now, but with the Henry Fords of the world who said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, okay, got it. And maybe the Elon Musks of the world fall into that, right? I mean, maybe they say, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm making this car. I'm making this, underground traffic killer. once and for all. I don't care. I will simultaneously put more cars on the road, and I will simultaneously find a way to eliminate cars from the road. And that is my desire, right? I mean, like, what a dichotomy, right? So what do you say to those folks?
Yeah, I think there is still a place for looking at that and saying people may not have a vision for the solution, but it's still rooted in a real problem, right? So if we look at Henry Ford, they would have asked for faster horses because if we think back, and we're big proponents of the jobs to be done framework and approach to things, they need to get from A to B. They need to get there reliably. I need to be able to get there in a reasonable amount of time, right? Or even faster than I can today. If you can still put your focus on those jobs that need to be accomplished, and maybe you're looking for unexpected gains that no one anticipated. And so the Henry Fords of the world will say, yeah, you don't need a faster horse. You actually need something over here that you never would have thought to ask for. You know, I think it still syncs up. It's just that is a much more difficult type of innovation. It is just a hard type of innovation because you're fighting a lot of other forces. And I think the ones that still have that visionary purpose, that visionary solution that's rooted in a real understanding of a customer problem, they're the ones that make it. And the ones that have this crazy out there vision, but it's not rooted in what people actually want and care about, they're the ones that don't. And so we know about the Elon Musks and we know about the Henry Fords and how seemingly against all odds they make something happen when nobody saw that coming and it's ridiculously successful or whatever. But I think the key there is, despite their visionary approach, they are still rooted in something real to be able to make that actually work. It's just not easy. It's just not easy. And I think when you look at where our team focuses, especially this kind of corporate innovation, where I'm trying to be innovative within this organization that, you know, Clay Christensen was famous for writing about the duality of having to run the business and yet still look at that disruptive innovation. And it's not wrong to keep running the business. In fact, it's critical.
Right.
Keep running
if you want to eat
while you're still exploring. Exactly. I think most of us enjoy that process. And so, you know, there is still a need that if you're going to approach what we're doing within something that's existing, within this corporate realm, within an existing running business, you need to take all of that into account. It's not that there's no room for the visionary innovation, but it's probably not the majority of the path that's going to be taken. But no matter what, all of it has to be rooted in that real customer issue and the real thing that they're trying to get done, regardless of if that innovation is visionary or if that innovation is saying, gosh, suitcases and wheels, maybe we should put those two things together and make life better for people.
You know, the first time I saw a group of Japanese tourists wheeling their suitcases vertically, you know, rather than us holding them horizontally, and it being at, you know, comfortable hand height. And I just remember with my jaw on the floor going, wheels on a suitcase, like brilliant. And it's the same level of ridiculous frustration I feel every time I get a box from Amazon that is filled with bags of air. And I look at those bags of air with patent numbers on them and I go, really, Sue, you couldn't have invented bag of air? Bag of air was a game changer instead of those little styrofoam peanuts. Why did I come up with bag of air? Someone is laying on a beach in Tahiti right now thanks to bag of air. Could have been us. Could have been us.
and you bring up a great point, right? The vision that we have are the crazy out there things that are visionary, and they are important innovations, and they work as long as they are rooted in something real. But if we're trying to broaden our view of innovation, there's a whole lot of other areas to play that can make serious impact and have serious value for a customer trying to get a job done that is very powerful to pursue.
Mm.
It really does come back to that listening, right? Truly listening to the person and what they're trying to get done and how they're struggling to get it done. If you spend the time to listen to that and then add in that you're a creative problem solver, you can come up with, I mean, some of these things that just change people's lives, that, yeah, wheels on a suitcase or the air, like these things that you just would have never imagined. And I have to believe that the reason they came up with those things is because they truly listened to the customer's problem or they experienced it themselves. And because of that, it led them to, how could I solve this in a really creative way?
Yeah. I'm hearing from so many of my guests that customer service and sales are some of the biggest drivers of innovation in terms of generating new ideas. One often thinks it's the engineering team or the folks who actually make those products that eventually get to market. But it seems like it's those who have the closest ear to the pain that the ideas come surging through. Do you find that at TD Ameritrade too?
Yeah, I think Michael, I think definitely what Michael had talked about, how we opened these ideation challenges up to the whole company. It used to be just a technology thing, but once you open it up to the whole company, all these people needed was a partner in technology to help them really see how they could potentially solve a problem for a client. But they were the ones with the client problem that they're trying to solve, because to your point, they're the ones that heard it every day. They were the ones using the technology or helping the client use the technology.
Mm. Yeah.
We have a mantra in our lean practice that the person closest to the work has the insights to make it better. And I think if the further removed you get from what's being done and the actual problem, the harder it is for you to be the one that's generating those ideas. Those people on the front lines, people actually interacting with the problems and with the work, they tend to have insights. They understand it because they're close to it.
So I think that's like a tweetable moment, and that is that the person closest to the work, right, is also the person closest to the pain. And therefore is the closest to the solution. Yeah, that's really, really powerful as we think about it, because those lessons for other innovators listening is, are you close enough to the pain to really understand the solution that you now need to create, as opposed to, like you said before, falling in love with the solution. So you guys are really at the initiation of the innovation phase. You're at ideation mode. So now that you have your senior executives all lined up, they know how to evaluate innovation, they know what they should be looking for, there's an integration with their own strategy. Gina, you were telling me a little bit about Strategizer and using a platform like that to kind of get everybody on board. What's next once you get to that next stage? So your executives on board, you know what you need to create. What then? What happens next at TD Ameritrade?
Yeah, once we have the strategy in place and we know where we want to explore, then it's time to set up these search teams. So we had a search team that we set up, built by the business. So those people, those executives that sit on that investment committee, helped us select the people that would sit on this. And then my team would help coach. And what they do is we give them, you mentioned Strategizer. We use the Strategizer tool. So the business model canvas, we're big fans of Alex Osterwalder and the business model canvas and the value prop canvas. So we give them those tools. The Strategizer has a great platform too, where you can actually do this virtually with using those templates. So it's been really easy to do in a virtual environment. So we show them, okay, this is basically, they start with this group started with kind of a vague idea of what needed to be done. And they spent most of their first couple of iterations really proving out the value prop. We had a pretty solid customer segment, but we needed to truly understand the value proposition, and did our customers want what we were putting in front of them. So they spent a lot of time just basically really understanding the job to be done. What are these clients trying to get done? And why are the things that are out there for them not solving this problem for them? Mm-hmm. So that's really what most of the experimentation was up front around that, was to truly understand what these people needed, what channel would they want? Did they want it online? Did they want digital? Did they want to be able to talk to somebody? or via, would they rather have a chat function? Like some of those types of things to truly understand what it was that with all of the different competition out there today, what it was that this job to be done still wasn't getting done for these clients. So that was kind of the next step. And we ran it in 6-week iterations. So then at a 6-week point, they had updates every week to keep their growth board stakeholders up to date. But it was optional. But then every 6 weeks, the growth board would actually come together with the search team on a call, and the search team would use the business model canvas as like their storytelling platform, basically, and tell what they had learned over that 6 weeks, what experiments they had run, what hypothesis was validated or invalidated. And then they themselves would evaluate their own work according to the business model canvas, a set of questions that they had. And present that to the team and give them what they thought the recommendation was to go forward with, where they should go next. And then the growth board would take all of that into account. And then at the end, they held a vote. Again, totally transparent. They voted in front of the whole search team to say whether or not they should continue. Before they had that vote, they could ask any questions that they had of the group. And then when they would vote, we had a really interesting one, because we've been doing this for several iterations now. We had a really interesting one where most of the stakeholders had voted strongly, yes, let's keep going. But one didn't. One voted kind of low on the scale. And so we even had that conversation openly in front of the search team to say, okay, you guys are over here, you're way down here on the other side. What's the disconnect? What do you need to see to move you that way? Or what are you guys maybe being too nice about that you should be moving the opposite direction? And that led to just some really fantastic conversation where it actually turned out that the person that had voted lower was actually more concerned about the person that was on the search team not having the time because all of these people were doing this on kind of the side of their desk. So he was worried that his person might not have the time to continue. And so he felt he had to make a trade-off. But then once we got that out in the open, we could talk about it and say, okay, if that's the problem, hey, the rest of the team, can we pick this up a little bit, pick up the work for this person so that we don't stop, because the person that was voting lower still saw value that it needed to continue, still saw that evidence. He just wasn't sure if the resource that the person themselves could keep up with the work. So long story short, it just led to some really great conversation. And so that's really, where we have come from today is being able to have those conversations and lead them through the business model canvas as a template as they get closer and closer to finding the kind of the secret sauce of what they've been exploring over the course of the time that they've been on this.
It's so fantastic. And the transparency and even the vulnerability of the innovation team to say, we don't necessarily have all the answers, but this is the right group of people to help figure out how to solve for those problems. Yes. And thank you for making the process stronger along the way, because how we had, if we had not had the conversation, maybe that would have been the weakest link and it would have died along the way. So how fantastic that the culture of listening and sharing within the group and the executive committee has become that much more transparent and stronger. Yeah. Part of the process of innovation storytelling, as I've worked on it for the last 20 years, is also identifying a couple of, key pieces that seem to hold an innovation process or hold the story along and allow other people to, create word of mouth, create excitement around an idea, because an idea with no energy also goes nowhere. And so oftentimes, you've already established some of these really critical pieces. Number one, there's a shared history, right? You share with the executive committee is attuned to where the company has been before. And those grounding principles of both innovation and product development and customer focus, right, from step one. So that shared history is usually a bedrock of creating a solid innovation storytelling process. Step two, though, is often the prophet, as I like to call them, or the person who leads the innovation. I find it fascinating that you guys have kind of done this by committee as opposed to one brave soul. So often we think about an innovator as a Steve Jobs, a Bill Gates, an Edison, Sarah Blakely, one woman alone on a crusade to end panty lines. I mean, like, how does it happen at TD Ameritrade? Is there the prophet who has to come in with a big idea, or how does it work?
We're kind of believers that innovation is a team sport, and that the diversity within a team of an appropriate size. So that's then what we need to continue to experiment with. How many is too many? How many is too few? The diversity that that team brings is incredibly powerful and valuable. I will say you tend to still see someone kind of rise to the fore, even within our search team. We started with probably a larger number than we would have originally anticipated or designed. But even within that large number, we saw 1 to 2 that really took charge and really led from the front, while everyone was still a part of leading and could still tell that story. They could still be a part of telling, the foretelling, the forthtelling of that kind of prophetic thing you were speaking of being able to say, this is why this is amazing. But there was definitely still 1 to 2 that were especially there. So I think that there's probably a bit of a middle ground there. There is likely always going to be someone that is that charismatic leader, or that will probably come to the front with a special passion. But we, as I said, are also big believers that innovation is a team sport, and that the diversity of thought, the diversity of approach, the diversity of experience brings immeasurable value to the team as a whole when they're trying to pursue that idea or that innovation.
Yeah. And, it does require that passion and enthusiasm. I often refer to the prophets, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, all of those who have come before us as some of the greatest viral storytellers of all time, because thousands of years later, we're still telling the story of their innovative ideas. Mm-hmm. Right. And not only that, those incredibly powerful folk with their incredibly powerful ideas, they imbued with us the desire to take the story into ourselves and share it around the world too, right? So it started with 12 good friends, right? following Jesus around, who wound up sharing the ideas pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-newspaper. And so, right, these are the guys who wound up spreading the word. So even with one charismatic, one passionate leader, it still takes a group of early adopters to spread that. But I want to ask one other thing, which is a values-driven conversation. And part of creating a story around innovation is also core values. How much does a core value discussion factor into your innovation decisions and how you communicate the innovation to other people?
Yeah, I think core values, it's huge. And it goes back to what Michael's saying, is that it's a team sport. I have seen innovation teams completely fail because the people involved don't embrace those core values. It's, people matter, and being able to work together and not care that I'm right and you're wrong, or this is my idea. Even though we're a team, it's my idea and I'm the smartest one in the room. So those values can make or break a team. And what I've seen with the team that we've been working with, they came in and they all together, it was great how they just so easily put their own egos aside, and it was about how can we make this work. And I think that's just been TD Ameritrade's culture to begin with, since I've worked here for over 8 years. And that's just the culture that I came into, which was, we're all going to work as hard as we can for what's best for this company. And that's just the way that we've always been. So when you put them on this team, that was what they embraced. They said, you know what, we want to find how to solve this problem for this client, and we don't care how much time it takes. We don't care that we're doing our day jobs over here and this is on the side. Like, we're all in. And that adds to the passion that you're talking about, and that drive that you need to carry these things forward, because it's not easy work, and you're not always going to get the visibility or the pat on the back every minute of the time that you're going. So you need that team, you need those core values to drive you forward.
And I think if I may add to that just a little bit, kind of yes and to that, because of the way that we approached this by having the leadership team, that growth board, as part of the strategy setting of helping select the people. And then even in some of our kickoff meetings where we started ideation around this thing that they were about to go do, the team and the leaders, the sponsors, were together in the same room, working on it together. And there was an immediate feeling of, we are trying to do this together. So even when the story Gina just told us saying, I don't think you should continue, there was still this feeling of, we're still working this thing together.
Right.
And that communal and shared value of, we're trying to do the best that we can for our company and for ourselves and for our team and for our leadership, like, we're in this together, was hugely powerful. That the shared values were hugely powerful in driving success forward and finding a way to deal with disappointment along the way, or deal with a different opinion, or even the leadership to hear the team say, what you thought we should go do is a bad idea, but this is what customers are saying is a good idea. And the leadership went, cool, to their credit, said, cool, well, you should probably pursue that then. That's an amazing thing that only happens when there is that shared value system and that shared approach, shared goal. So yeah. You're absolutely right that that's so important.
And I often hear from other folks, because innovation is the business of failure. And so, well, I shouldn't say that. Innovation is the business of success with a lot of failure built into it, a lot of trial and error. And so I've also heard from other folks that being able to quantify, thank goodness we didn't go down this path. Executive committee, we actually saved you $4.2 million had we actually decided to execute it this way. And other folks I've talked to here have told me that they actually publish short memos that circulate to the entire company that say, want to let you know about our latest failure. And boy, are we glad. And let me tell you about the learnings that we derived from the following failure, which is now being distributed to these 4 teams. And these teams are now using the learning from the failure, so that it's almost like innovation compost. If we take this one step further, mm-hmm. right? The stuff that gets discarded winds up being the fertilizer for the next great idea. So we talked about values, we talked about our profits, we talked about our shared history. What about the message itself? What happens when the thing that you're innovating toward is actually going to be replacing a current money generating product, and you're upgrading, you're updating, or you're maybe even discarding and sunsetting a product? How terrifying is that?
Yeah, that can be very scary for people. And what we did at the very beginning and continued to do, we worked really closely with our Agile transformation group along with the Agile teams, because what we wanted them to get comfortable with is understanding the lean product lifecycle. We're big advocates of that, and understanding that there is a time where a product does need to retire. And how great is it if you're a product team and you see that and you can say, you know what, let's retire this, because over here we've got this great thing coming down the pipe. And if we retire this, we can free up our team to take that on. And that was something that our CEO at the time was really excited about, to know that we weren't saying, do this new framework and you're going to have to add a whole bunch more people to build things. We were saying in tandem, we have this new framework, but we're also working with our Agile coaches and our Agile side of the house to say, let's help them know when to retire something, or when let's help them understand when to stop investing so heavily in a product that maybe isn't as valuable as it once was, to free up the resources to be able to bring these new things on. And so it was just one big circle. And that was really exciting for him and his leadership team, because it gave them the comfort that we're not saying let's go hire a bunch of people or let's fire the people that have been so successful building products that have done well for us. What we're saying is, if you can build one product really successfully for a number of years, once that's ready to retire, that frees you up to do something new and something exciting. And that really got the energy around this whole framework, because it really was from the very beginning to the very end, full product lifecycle innovation.
So how terrifying is it for the guy whose name is head of soon to be sunsetted product to really dive in and support your super new innovation when he spent the last 10 years building that product and monetizing it and watching it become the darling of the portfolio of products? What do you say to that guy?
Michael, we kind of had that guy, didn't we? That's who we were working so closely with, but we really did kind of get him on board with what we were, not sure if you know who I'm speaking of, but I felt like we got him on board as we were going. And even one of the other stakeholders was very concerned about how this might impact if they went digital on what we were looking to do, how that might impact their business and their people as well, and some of their relationships. But they needed to understand we have to continually evolve. And once they understood that, it did reduce the fear. I'm not going to say that it's still not scary. And I'm sure that there are people that I don't want you to kill this, but we brought them, the two people I'm speaking of, we brought them onto that executive committee that I was talking about, that investment committee, so that they had a chance to see the evidence, to understand what we were proposing. And they had a chance to vote on it too, but they also learned not to put their bias in front of them and to do it through evidence-based decision-making. So I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it reduces all of the fear, but we did bring them with us so that it wasn't as scary and they felt like they had a chance to speak on what was happening to them rather than something being done to them.
I'll also add to that, I think we were fortunate in that we had leadership that was willing to say, wow, my idea was really bad. So our CEO got really excited about a particular idea. And one of our very first, it actually was in our incubator, but one of our very first teams went out and spent 3 months working on that idea and investigating it. And they came back to him and they said, it's a dumb idea. And he went, cool, I guess I just learned that for $5,000 in 3 months of your time or whatever it was,
He's
right?
Really
and better than just saying that, he then was incredibly public, and it became one of his favorite stories to tell. To say, I was wrong, guys. And look at what we did. We figured that out really quickly and cheaply and easily. And isn't that cool? And so then as our leadership is telling that story, you talk about communicating, telling that story and saying it's okay to be wrong. And it's okay to say, hey, look, I was wrong. We had more and more opportunity for those people who are head of soon to be sunsetted product to be able to say, it's okay to change. It's okay to now think something different. It's okay to, we from a change management perspective need to honor their contribution, celebrate the contribution, celebrate everything that brought us to today, because we would not be where we are without you, head of soon to be sunsetted product. We wouldn't be in existence. We wouldn't be a company. And that is an important story to tell and an important story to celebrate, and then also give them the permission and the visible leadership from the top to say, and it's okay to move on to something new. And you weren't even wrong. It's just time to move to something new. And that's okay. And that's in fact also to be celebrated. And I think
thank you for providing the stepping stone.
Combination of impact helps.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it also helps if that's a guy's not getting fired as you bring on the new innovation. Big plus.
Right.
Yes,
Just
exactly.
saying.
That safety, putting that safety, letting that safety be there was important. And it made me, Michael, something you said reminded me too of a misstep that we made early on. When they set us up, when they set our group up, it was all about, let's be innovative. Well, that offended a lot of people because they're like, we've always been innovative. So we really, when you talk about storytelling and communications, we really had to celebrate, to Michael's point, we were based on innovations. That's how we started our company. And we had to make sure that story it's just our DNA. We are an innovative company. All we're talking about is we might have some tools and techniques that might help us do this in a way that's a little bit more structured so that we get to better end results the way that we go about it. And that's all we were trying to do. Yeah, and faster. So
and faster, more cost effectively.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we did all learn that along the way, is that recognize all of the innovative paths that you've had along the way. And that if that is in part of your just DNA and just hardwired, respect that, and respect that people have been doing this all along, and you're just adding on to what is already kind of there. You're tapping into it.
Steve Jobs said that, we're all innovators. Some of us just see the connections between the dots differently. And when you think of it as just a reconfiguration of the dots, the guy who's currently running the show, who needs to just see a new way of old dots being connected, right? New connections being made. Well, this has just been a fantastic discussion. I'm so grateful for both understanding the innovation, the process at TD Ameritrade, and also how you go about telling the stories so that that innovation engine just keeps on going. And it's thanks to, both of you, Gina and Michael, for keeping that passion and enthusiasm behind the innovation going. So where can we keep up to date about all the cool things that TD Ameritrade, and now your acquisitive father has brought you on board, Charles Schwab, right? You're part of the Charles Schwab family. So how can we keep up to date with all the innovations that are going to be coming from the work that you do?
We do have a very strong external communications group, and I'm sure that will continue with Schwab as well. So as things come out, we're always putting things out there for people to read, kind of where we're at. We've even had articles just about our framework and how we approached it, and our CIO has done a lot of that as well, just to get out there what we're doing. So a lot of times you can just find us out on I think we've had some articles on Fast Company and Forbes and things like that, just explaining kind of where we're at and what we've been doing. And that'll just continue as we go.
Well, kudos to the PR team that puts innovation center to the work that you're doing. Obviously, some great innovation storytellers there too. Thank you so much. And we look forward to having more conversations like this. Thanks, Gina and Michael.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
This innovation story has ended, but yours is just beginning. Go to innovationstorytellers.com, download the free Innovation Storytelling Blueprint, and sign up to pre-order Susan's book, Innovation Storytelling. Get the resources, runway, and recognition you deserve due out this spring. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Until the next innovation story.